Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Picard Season 1, Episode 1. I believe it's called Remembrance. So at the moment, I'm on vacation in New Zealand in beautiful Lake Wanaka. So you'll have to pardon the background noise. You'll hear the waves from the lake and some cars going by. Sorry, I'm on vacation, so this is the best I could do. But I did want to, come on here and talk about Picard because this is the show I've been waiting for a long time to see, and I did watch it last night. And I gotta say, I was super impressed. They reached my expectations and exceeded it. Now I'm on vacation, so I haven't been online very much. I haven't seen what other people were saying about Picard. I imagine some people are complaining that it's too modern because that's what people always do about modern Star Trek, and the fact that it's not a carbon copy of Next Generation. But to me, it seems like everything's in character. To me, this feels like the universe of Next Generation, the universe of Star Trek. But of course, it's a different spin, a different twist, because it's taking place 30 or so years after Next Generation finished. I believe, because in the finale, All Good Things, that showed a future 25 years in the future, and this one is supposed to be even further in the future than that. So, so I think it kind of makes sense. And now, a lot of people might have different feelings about how Starfleet was portrayed in the Federation as pretty much going downhill. And some people may be really against that. And to be perfectly honest, my gut reaction was to be, I don't like this. Because Star Trek is always, the Federation and Starfleet has always stood for the good guys, of what Roddenberry's perfect vision of what humanity can accomplish in the future. So it does seem a little bit like this show is undermining Roddenberry's vision by saying that Starfleet is going downhill. But in every incarnation of Star Trek, not just Deep Space Nine, but even Next Generation in the original series, you saw inklings of evil admirals, or Section 31, or just people involved in the Federation and Starfleet who, even Star Trek 6 is a good example of that, because that was people in Starfleet who were trying to undermine peace. So there's been examples in all of Star Trek of bad rogue elements within Starfleet, within the Federation, but in all those episodes, of course, the good guys always win. Picard or Sisko or Janeway or whoever always triumph over the evil admiral, and things go back to normal. But this is supposing, what if the evil admirals win? And I think that's actually a very likely scenario, particularly the scenario it gives where the choice was helping the Romulans, a foe who's, they've been at a Cold War with for many, many years, and who've, there's been deaths on both sides. And so I could get why a lot of people would not be willing to help the Romulans. And apparently, I haven't gotten exactly how the attack on Mars is tied into it. I got an impression, because they were done by Rogue Sense, but I got the impression that they were attacking Mars specifically because that's where the relief effort on Romulus was. That's where they were building all the ships to help the Romulans. So apparently it was done as a direct response to Starfleet helping the Romulans. This is what I got out of it anyway, and that's why they stopped helping the Romulans, because they realized they blame Picard and people who wanted to help the Romulans because they see it as their fault Mars got attacked. And so this is we touch on similar issues on the Dominion War, and maybe even the Borg as well, that when Earth is in danger, when Starfleet is in danger, where they're directly attacked, they kind of forego their high principles of helping everyone, and they succumb to fear, especially because they have so much to protect. They have this perfect paradise. And so I totally buy that the elements of fear would win out in Starfleet and the Federation, and that they would completely turn a blind eye to sort of helping the enemy. And this was interesting. The show itself, of course, it had that interview with the reporter, which was a very, obvious way to dump exposition. Sometimes I thought it was maybe a little bit clunky, and also to me personally, I find it a bit cliche to have we'll have the interview and they had the prearranged questions that we agreed to, and Picard's like, did they have the questions the prearranged? And like, yeah, they'll agree to the questions. And of course, the reporter completely goes off the prearranged questions and it does an attack mode, and that's something very cliche that we've seen a lot of film and television, which I don't think is actually that accurate to how reporting actually works, but it was an interesting way, of course, to dump all this exposition about what happened to Picard, what happened in the Federation. I thought it was actually a really interesting way to tie the events of Star Trek 2009, as much as I hate that movie, but it is canon, as ever much I may hate it, because it did mention in the Prime timeline the destruction of Romulus. I hope they explain how a supernova can destroy like entire empire spanning planets, but I don't know, because I thought a supernova I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but anyway, Romulus maybe it was just Romulus, but then the infrastructure for the rest of the empire fell apart without the homeworld. That could be it. But anyway, it seems like a supernova is something that you could see millions of years coming, but whatever. Maybe it was caused by artificial means. I don't know. People who read the comics and whatnot probably know this, but I'm not gonna read the fucking comics to see what's going on in the TV show. I shouldn't have to. But anyway, yeah, so that was really true to Picard's character, and I think you may say, oh, this is totally against Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek, but Picard fighting against the Federation is something we have seen in Next Generation a lot of times before. We saw, The Measure of the Man is a really great example, and then the Offspring is another good example, where the Starfleet Admiral wanted to take Data's daughter away from him, and he's like, no, and he stands up to them. But most of all those times, and Drumhead's another good example, but most of those times, Picard wins. But then we see a time when he loses to the point where he resigns at a protest. And I think that's very interesting storytelling. And I think, some people might see that Picard in his portrayal in this show is a bit cantankerous. But to those people, I would say go watch All Good Things, because he's even more cantankerous in that, and this is supposed to take place after that. So if I think about how he was portrayed in All Good Things, this kind of goes along that Picard would get, especially the shit he's been through with Starfleet, that he would be a bit, cantankerous and whatnot. And then we get into the main plot with Daj. I love this stuff. I think like the scene that introduced her where her boyfriend was killed and these people try to kidnap her, and then she goes into like attack mode and beats the shit out of them. That was an amazing scene. Now I could see some people saying, oh, this is too modern, whatever. Get out of here. I think Star Trek needs to evolve but still feel like Star Trek. And this, I think, pulls it off perfectly. That scene was amazing, and it was a great way. I think this isn't technically a pilot episode because they didn't need to test this because they knew they got the go ahead. But this is a great first episode. I think this is amazing, and part of the reason why I would definitely feel this is above like many of the pilot episodes of the 90s of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, is because those felt, especially Next Generation, those felt like, oh, we have to introduce the characters. Here's all the characters. Oh, here's this, and it's all, so the first episode is all like, oh, look at this cool new thing. Look at that cool new thing. Where this episode didn't do that, because it knew it didn't have to. It knew it wasn't a pilot. So it doesn't have to be, oh, look at this character, look at that character. I mean, we are introduced to a couple of characters in the first, but it felt natural to the story. It didn't feel like out of place, like, oh, we got to introduce Dr. Crusher, or we got to introduce Tom Paris. It felt like, and there's still some characters we have yet to see. And I love that. I think the way they introduced the characters, it did feel very natural. And of course, everyone was speculating since the trailers months ago came out to Picard when it showed Daj, or this young woman who was in trouble and asked for Picard for help. Everyone's wondering who she is. Is she a Borg queen? And one of the theories out that she was Lal, Data's daughter, and she's not, but apparently it wasn't very far off. If we're to believe the explanation we're giving in this episode, she was a soon-type android created by Commander Maddox. And I love the callback to Measure of the Man, by the way. And it's interesting because in that episode, Measure of the Man, Commander Maddox was an asshole. He was a bit of a dickhead. He was the adversary. But he's mentioned in Data's day, later has someone that Data is friends with, who corresponds with, because by the end of Measure of Man, he comes to respect Data, and he comes to want to create soon-type androids, but in the right way. But apparently, we learn here that he did, and those are the androids that attacked Mars, so his whole program got shut down, and then he vanished, disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. It does make me wonder if we will see him later in the show. I think it would be interesting. Maybe season 2. And so apparently he created these other 2 androids based off of Data's programming thingy. He apparently had something of Data's. Apparently, it's interesting because they showed the remains of B4. I like to call back to Nemesis, but they said that B4 was not up to standard, and also that the download of Data's memories into B4 didn't quite work, because in Nemesis it's obvious that they were setting up for Data to come back to life. And I think that there were some novels, non-canon novels, that actually play this out, where Data took over B4's body because he downloaded all the memories. But I've heard from other sources that Brent Spiner only agreed to return to Picard if they kept Data dead, which is interesting. So they say here that it didn't work. So everyone's fan theories and what they were setting up for, obviously, they decided not to do. That B4 was just a useless prototype. And he actually wasn't that helpful in creating more androids, which is pretty interesting. So I didn't see that coming. But apparently the Daj, and it's in her whole storyline of being hunted, and then the mother, it does make me wonder who this mother figure actually is, because if she's an android, she obviously doesn't have a biological mother, or maybe, I don't know. But she suggests to go see Picard, so that's pretty interesting. And she does seek out Picard for help, and we get that scene we saw the trailer of her on the stairs fighting those people, but she dies. And that shocked the hell out of me that she died, and I thought that they were going to bring her back to life. Well, of course, because we know she's going to be a main character in the show, so obviously she's coming back to life, but no, she's not. She just has a twin, basically another android that was created that's identical to her, and that's the character who's going to be in the show. That was a bold step, and I definitely did not see that coming. So I love the tie-in to Data and to androids, and of course androids are banned, outlawed because they attacked Mars. It does make me wonder what happened to those specific androids. But I hope they touch on what happened to holograms, because then there's Voyager. The Doctor had his whole plight against holographic rights, and we do see that there is a hologram in that archive that Picard goes to. But probably, I would say the Doctor lost his fight, because it seems like Starfleet and Federation would be against all kinds of synthetic life, including holograms, and so it seems like they would only allow non-sentient ones like that one in the archive. So I hope since they have 7 of 9's going to be in here later, I hope they at least mention what the hell happened to the Doctor, because in this present atmosphere, it doesn't seem like things would bode very well for him. And that's very interesting. Although I will say because if this ties in, a lot of people theorize this ties into Discovery Season 3, because that's taking place 1,000 years in the future, like the 30th century or something, and the Federation's pretty much turned evil. So people are saying that this is showing the origins of that the Starfleet and Federation is starting to become corrupt, and by the time we get to the 30th century, whatever, they're completely like the bad guys, which that actually violates canon. If we're going to be a bit of a canon hawk, because we were introduced to the temporal prime the temporal police, or whatever they call it, temporal investigators of the 29th century. We saw a few of them in Voyager, and in Enterprise we had Crewman Daniels, who was from the 29th century, and he was talking about Starfleet and the Federation like they still existed, like they were still good things, and he was still trying to uphold the Temporal Prime Directive, so it seemed like they were still highly principled. So it does seem like if they said, oh, they're turning evil by the 30th century, well, it seems like, I don't know. I wouldn't put it past this new incarnation to just ignore it, and I wouldn't be that too, like, canon, if they did, but it would kind of annoy me. If I'm being perfectly honest, it always seems like lazy writing to me when they just ignore canon that's inconvenient to what they want to do to the plot. I think better writers would find a way for existing canon to work with their story. That's just me. I never really cared much about Discovery hurting canon because most of it had to do with technology, and I was just like, what are they going to do? It's being filmed in 2016. They're not going to make it look like the 60s. I'm sorry. And some person suggested that they could, but that's ridiculous. That's totally dumb. Of course they're not. So that stuff never bothered me. But stuff like, oh yeah, let's just pretend the temporal investigators never existed, or let's try to twist it so it fits into our new version, that does bother me. But I'm not going to be like, the whole show sucks, fuck Picard, because that's stupid. I still love the show. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents now, and there's a motorboat behind me. So let me just go, and my battery's running low, so let me just go ahead and give my rating for Star Trek Picard, episode 1. I'm going to give it a 10. Fuck it. 10 out of 10. The best. I think this was an amazing pilot episode. It really got me hooked. Stayed true to the characters. Really suspenseful. Really enticing. It was an amazing way to introduce characters. I will say is one of the best first episodes. It made a really good impression. Now, whether or not the rest of the series will hold up to this high quality, it remains to be seen. But I certainly hope so. And I have high hopes because Patrick Stewart was heavily involved. He wanted to make sure it was something of high quality, and I think that totally shows in this first episode. So maybe sometime later, I'll cover more of this when I cover more of my Picard videos. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this and putting up with all this background noise. I'll let you see where I am. Beautiful Lake Wanaka. I love it. So enjoying the sunshine. So I'll see you guys later, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for more reviews and stuff. Catch you next time.